My name is Cher Yazvac. I'm Associate Director at the Center for Career Opportunities, and I just celebrated 30 years at Purdue in August. So I'm hoping that all of you are thinking, she must have been a baby when she started. But if you're not, I'll forgive you. I won't hold it against you. And I realized, like when I was getting ready this morning, that I hadn't decided on an icebreaker. So turn to someone beside you, tell them how long you've been at Purdue, and a one-word description of your time so far. 30 seconds. Go. Okay, let's come back together. So after I agreed to do this, I started feeling kind of daunted because I thought, I just agreed to do the basics of coaching in higher ed in 45 minutes. How unrealistic is that? And so I put the caveat on there of some basics of coaching in higher education. I was also daunted because I realized the Career Coaching Intensive, the 2-day workshop that I do, is all copyrighted information. And so I'm looking at not being able to use any of that. So I think that I've come up with a plan that is not breaking any copyright laws. If we see policemen enter, we'll know I was incorrect in that. So the wonderful thing about coaching is that it's very versatile, but also you don't have to swallow the whole camel. That you take whatever works for you in your role, you take whatever triggers something for you and use it. So that's kind of the perspective we're coming from. My background is counseling, and of course my experience is with career counseling. And when I began to learn about coaching and I began to see some ways that I was aligning with coaching. So some of the ways that I've changed is that to align with coaching is that I'm now very focused. That whatever is happening at the moment with the student or with the staff person, I'm going to be focused there. I'm much more willing to go with your agenda. So if I'm working with you, even though I may have this wonderful plan, I'm going to say, no, let's look at where you are. I'm also very action-oriented, and I'm much quicker to refer if there's a mental health issue that comes up. And so my background is counseling, but if that mental health issue is arising, I'm still going to be willing to get going talking about it, but then refer, because that's not really the role of the career consultants or of coaches to deal with the mental health areas. So that's kind of where I am with coaching. So what we're going to talk about today is our strengths, solutions, and actions. That's where the bulk of our time is going to be spent today. Strengths, solutions, and actions. However, it felt like I needed to put an umbrella or a rainbow, that the overall perspective with coaching is really you see the client or the student or the staff member as capable, as resourceful, as able. That's the perspective. And that you as a coach view them with hope and positivity. And there's been a lot of research that shows that in itself is going to cause an increase in self-efficacy if that's your approach. So the way I show this is a little video that my staff laugh at, but it's a very basic way of showing this attitude.
You is kind, you is smart, you is important, you is smart, you is kind, you is important. Oh, that's so good.
I thought that was a very graphic way of showing our perspective as we view our students. So I try to really integrate this into workshops that I do, into our one-on-one interactions. So just a few of examples of that. I would do a lot of freshman workshops. Could be resumes, it could be interviewing. But at the beginning of the freshman workshops, I do a Wheel of Fortune game that is a 10-word statement, 2 letters in every word. Darshini's laughing. She's seen me do this many times. That is a key career development principle. And that statement is, if it is to be, it is up to me. And so we play the game, but I just did this semester, and I had a friend that was an advisor that she said a student came to see her, and the student had not been to class for the last several times, that this was the first class they'd shown up in. And the student came to our office and said, I get it. I get it now that I'm at Purdue University, that I am the one that's responsible. And that was very exciting to see that. But it can be in any situation. I also just did a graduate women in science group, PhDs in science. And one of the things that I say to them is, you are some of the brightest people on this campus that don't feel like it. And they smile because it's exactly true. And one of the people came to see me for a job search appointment afterwards and said, that was the most important thing that you said in that meeting. Now I started thinking, wait a minute, we did a lot of job search strategies, but she was there for a job search appointment. So I try to integrate it into workshops, but also the one-on-one. A senior graduated in May and they're showing up in July in the CCO. We're going to say, congratulations, you graduated. That's a huge accomplishment. It's a great thing that you are here. We're going to integrate positivity and hope and expectancy into all of those. So that's the umbrella perspective with coaching. Now, the client sets the agenda, and the best analogy I have for that is I dance with my husband. I know I don't look like it, but we do choreographed ballroom, which means it's cued ballroom. The couples dance in a circle. My husband actually taught dance in his youth, so he's a very good dancer. But when we're flowing, I mean, there is nothing like it. There's nothing like dancing and you're in flow with the person. However, sometimes I hear something different than he heard, and then it becomes wrestling. So we are going around fighting. So when you're working with a student, a staff member, and you recognize you're in the flow and things are going really well, but all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, this is now a wrestling match. That's like a red flag to say, wait a minute, I am not going with the client's agenda. There's an issue going on here, to back up. So one caveat, 90% of the students that we work with or the staff members that we work with are at some level of readiness for change. However, many of us know, especially if we're academic advising, there is that small percentage of students that are in denial, they're definitely not in a readiness stage. And so solutions and actions will actually increase resistance if we're trying to do that when they're in that pre-contemplative or sometimes even in a contemplative stage. So that's just a caveat that we're going to focus on strengths, solutions, and actions. Strengths are always a good thing. Solutions and actions if the person is at any point of readiness for change. Okay, the strengths. Focus. I would like you to think about a time when you have been doing something you really enjoyed and you're really good at. This could be a task at work, a project, could be a personal endeavor. But think of something that you were doing, you were just in the groove, in the flow. What were you doing? What skills were you using? How did it feel? What was the outcome? And I would like you to take the next couple minutes and just tell the person next to you, what was that activity? What were you doing? How was it? Okay, 2 minutes, go. Okay, let's come back together. Okay, so how did that feel? I know you guys are very excited because it's hard for you to come back. So how did that feel talking about what you do well?
It's difficult. It's something that I was just telling Jenna that, and I can only speak for myself and a few other women I've met along the course of my life, that it's hard to really say without feeling guilty that you're good at it.
Yeah. So what she said is that it's difficult. It's hard to say what you're really good at. And you didn't use the word modesty or bragging, but I'm thrilled that you brought that up because I had a whole slide on it and thought, oh, we don't have time for that. There is a societal pressure against talking about our strengths. And as we're talking to students, it's important to frame there's a reason for doing this. We're talking about your strengths for your self-understanding, for your ability to utilize those strengths. And particularly women, you're right. And particularly some different cultures, there's a bias against that. So, yes. Other, how did you feel? How was it? Yes? It makes you. Yes. Yes. No, well put. It makes you feel good because you're good at them. It feels good. It does feel good. It's energizing. What did you notice when you were, I can tell you what I noticed as I was watching you. What did you notice as you were watching the other person talk? Yes? Yeah. Yeah. She said you felt like people's eyes lit up. They were passion. You used the word passion. Yeah, and you can identify that. As you're talking with a student, you can identify that passion, the eyes lighting up. You recognize, oh, we're in the zone now. Yes?
Also smile.
Smile.
Just the whole face. It's not just the eyes. The whole face lights up, smiles and all that.
Yes. The whole face lights up, smiles, there's energy, and that is the first strategy, is to ask. I said, think about a time. I could have said, what was a time when you were in the zone, when you were doing something you do well and you enjoyed. Other questions you might ask is, what are you most proud of? What energizes you? What are 3 accomplishments? What are you looking forward to? Just ask the questions that pull out those strengths. Now, there are 5 other strength strategies we're going to talk about, but I am going to use a video to illustrate those before we talk about them. So observe what kind of strengths talk you notice.
Whoever you are, whatever it is you're doing.
This is not supposed to happen, but they paid extra, so even if you pull it up on your computer, it still comes up. So this is not your video. This is the advertisement. Oh, you think it's me not being signed? That's probably... No, it does it on my computer, too. This ad comes up. They've paid extra. Yeah.
Right. Roll three. Let's go.
You got 100 pounds on Collis and you can't keep them out of our backfield? Hold your block until the whistle blows. Hold it. All right, let's go.
What's with the camera? Michael always does better when he sees what he's supposed to be doing.
Let's go.
Holding. Left tackle.
Michael, come on.
Come here, son. You're going to hold him. Hold him inside here between the tits. You got it? Will you look at me, son? If you grab them outside here like this or that horse collar thing you just did, you're going to get flagged and I'm going to be pissed. You hear me? All right, let's go.
Baby, wash my stuff, all right?
Okay.
Well, at least they look good coming off the bus. They'll be terrified till they realize he's a marshmallow. Looks like Tarzan plays like Jane.
Give me a minute, Bert.
We're in the middle of practice, Leanne.
You can thank me later. Come on. Michael, do you remember when we first met and we went to that horrible part of town to buy you those dreadful clothes? And I was a little bit scared and you told me not to worry about it because you had my back. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
And if anyone tried to get to me, you would have stopped them, right? And when you and SJ were in that car wreck, what did you do to the airbag?
Stopped it?
You stopped it. You stopped it. This team is your family, Michael. You have to protect them from those guys, okay? Listen. Okay. Tony here's your quarterback, all right? You protect his blind side. When you look at him, you think of me, how you have my back, how you have his, okay? All right, Tony, go back. All right. Uncle Lumpy here is your tailback. When you look at him, you think of SJ and how you've never let anyone or anything hurt him. You understand me? All right. Go back. Got it?
What about Collins and Mr. Tui?
Fine. They can be on the team, too. Are you going to protect the family, Michael?
Yes, ma'am.
Good boy. Then go have some fun. Yelling at him doesn't work, Bert. Doesn't trust men. In his experience, they pretend to care about you till they disappear.
Want to run a play?
SJ, you're going to want to get this.
Okay. Come on, Michael.
Watch yourself. Yeah.
All right, Michael, come on. Yes, Michael.
All right, way to go, Al. Way to go.
That boy.
Okay. What'd you say to him?
You should get to know your players, Bert. He tested 98% in protective instincts. I said you could thank me later. It's later, Bert.
Okay, what did you notice about the strengths talk? What struck you? Yes? Connected the current challenge to prior successes. Great. Other things that you noticed? Yes. She mentioned a formal assessment. I don't know if that is real or not, but she referred to a formal assessment and said he tested high in this area, so she called on it. Anything else that struck you? Somebody in the last session said this, and I think it was really important. She said, I don't think he knew that the strength was there, that she recognized it. Yes?
When she specifically said you did that, so it wasn't that it happened, it was that
Right.
your strength is what caused those things to happen.
Right. She empowered him. So I just thought this was an incredible example. This is a true story. Now, who knows the specifics, but it was life-changing. And so the first strategy is identify the strengths and name them. She said, protector of the family. In my staff, I supervise several people. One is an etiquette queen. Another is a networker extraordinaire. Another is a mover and a shaker. So identify them, name them, help them own them. Reframe. This is not the last time we'll talk about reframing, and I know you talked about it in the last session too, but it's incredibly powerful. I had a student come to my office, senior, said to me, I haven't done anything related to job search since we talked last. Then she went on to give me this incredible thinking she had done. She had a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. All of these solutions worked out. And so as she's talking, I'm writing. And at the end, I said, wow, you have done all this incredibly complex thinking, evaluating pros and cons. And she looked at me and said, but I didn't know that I had. When you reframe, you identify and you reframe for someone, that it can be incredibly empowering. You call them to use those strengths. So again, I supervise several people in our office, and there are some things I hate doing. Writing instructions is one of them. But we have a handbook, a training manual, and it really needs reworking. So one of our staff members, I call her the master manual writer. And so I said to her, we plan assignments a year ahead. Would you be interested in taking on redoing? And I was almost embarrassed, because I think I'm the supervisor, I should be doing this. Would you be interested in redoing our manual? She said, I would love to do that. Now, isn't that what you want your supervisees to say, is I would love to do that? So call people to use their strengths. Use formal assessments. In the CCO, we use the Strong Interest Inventory. We use the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. Many of you are familiar with Strengths Finder. Again, I have no idea if Sandra Bullock was referring to a real one or not. But use those formal assessments in your office with your students. There's a website called Authentic Happiness that has a ton of formal assessments that are free. I really like the character strengths one. I think it has some features of strength that are different than StrengthsFinder. I feel like it describes who I am, that StrengthsFinder describes what I do, and this character strengths one describes who I am. So use the formal assessments. Use the client language and use metaphors. Incredibly powerful. If you're talking with a sports person, use sports language. If you're talking with a scientist, use the science language. If you're talking with a swimmer, use how many laps, are you stretching? Use their own language because it makes it resonates more. And then metaphors are incredibly powerful tools. She called him the protector of the family. You could be, a metaphor is just incredibly powerful. And I'll use a personal example. Somebody, and I don't know if it was in the other group or in this group, said they wanted to learn to coach themselves better. So I try to do that a lot, and I use metaphors even in my own self-talk. So when I get into what I call deep waters, and I feel like I'm way over my head, I change that to say, okay, I'm riding the waves. I'm in deep water, but I'm riding the waves. Well, there's a young woman that I was talking to this summer who is a missionary to South Africa, and she's the head of all of youth ministries in the whole country, which they consider college youth ministries too. So I don't even know if she's 30 yet. And so when I was praying for her, I used the term, you're riding the waves. Well, I had an email from her just a few weeks ago, and she says, I keep going back to, I am riding the waves. That is powerful. It brought tears to my eyes because I thought it was humbling because that phrase helped her envision how she wanted to be in this position. That's the power of a metaphor, is that you can actually get them to own the position. She could have been saying, I am sinking in the ocean out here. And I'm sure she has times of feeling like that. So all of these strategies are helpful with using strengths. This is like an aside, but an exciting aside, that How does it relate to higher ed? So Purdue has partnered, of course, with Gallup, and this is cutting-edge research. This is what, I don't know how you feel about Mitch Daniels. We won't go into that conversation, but this has really put Purdue on the map in terms of measuring not just first destination, not just salaries, but work engagement. So they surveyed 30,000 alumni, not just Purdue, but alumni across the country. How many of you have read the Purdue Gallup report? Lots of you, yeah. So you know there are all kinds of measurements in it, but I'm just focusing on that engagement piece. They found that 39% of the alumni were engaged. 12% were actively disengaged, which means that they were being paid to sabotage the workplace. We won't even go into that, but this is what engaged looks like. I had a student in a session when I asked for an example of who was engaged. He said, you're my example. So I am engaged. You are engaged when you're able to do what you do best and you like what you're doing, which is nothing except using strengths. So that's connecting. We have a responsibility to be coaching our students to use their strengths because we want that percentage to go up, and we want Purdue's percentage of engaged students to go way up. And of course, also coaching is when there's someone who cares about your career development. So that's applicable when they're students, of course, for our supervisees. So just a little aside to show specifically coaching and higher ed. So we're moving into solutions, and we're going to do an exercise. And I invite you to close your eyes, but if you're not comfortable with that, just stare off into space. Anything that will get you in your inner zone. And I want you to think about a mild problem that you have. Nothing too deep. We don't want to go into tears here. But you're behind on your Christmas shopping. The house is a wreck. The exercise isn't there. I'm not spending enough time with my children or my significant other. But think about something that is a mild problem to you. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions to think about. So what's wrong? Why do I have this problem? How long have I had it? How does this limit me? What does this problem keep me from doing that I want to do? Whose fault is it that I have this problem? When was the worst time I experienced this problem? Just think about that for a little bit. Now, using that same problem, turn it into a goal. If it was not spending enough time, I would like to spend 3 hours a week in significant time with my spouse. I would like to have my house cleaned before Christmas. You can see the personal part coming out here. I will be caught up with my Christmas shopping in 2 weeks. So change it to a goal. And now think about, what do I want? When do I want it? How will I know that I have it? When I get what I want, what else in my life will change? What resources do I have to help me with this? how can I best utilize the resources that I have? What am I going to begin doing now to get what I want? Now visualize yourself with your desired outcome. Pretend you already have it, and notice how you look, your expression, how you feel. Okay, let's come back together. What was that like in those two different experiences? Yes? You felt more hopeful in the second one? Yes? You felt less stressed in the second one? Yes, Bryn? You felt more in control in the second one? Yes? Felt discouragement in the first one, motivation in the second one. That's a pretty different experience. Yes, Lynn? So the first one you felt confined, second one felt free. Those are pretty powerful examples, and what we just did was an example of reframing. Reframing from a problem or a blame orientation to a solution orientation. And we can do that continuously with our students, with our supervisees, with ourselves, the person that said self-coaching, to change it to a goal orientation rather than a blame. Another strategy for solutions is ask questions to focus on possibilities, on solutions. Somebody comes in for job search, and I'm going to say, what have you got covered already? Where do you want to grow with your job search strategies? We're going to focus on positive questions. What additional job search strategies have you thought about? What can we look at that might be more effective for you in your job search? So ask questions that focus on solutions. Identifying exceptions. Those of you that are academic advisors, this is not a new scenario for you. I had a student I was doing career counseling with, and she had already gone through identifying strengths. She had already identified careers of interest, had actually identified 4 or 5 majors of interest she was going to research, but then said, I'm not a good decision maker. I know that many of you have heard that from students a lot. And so I said, can you think of a time when you've made a decision and you look back on it and you feel good about that decision? Well, it took her a while, but finally she said, relationships. I've made good decisions on my relationships. And I said, how did you determine that they were good decisions? She said, it was the way they made me feel. So I said, how about taking that strategy and looking at these majors and looking at how do they make me feel? So we scheduled an appointment for her to come back with her thoughts and feelings and debrief. She emailed me 2 days later and said, I've made a decision. I feel totally confident. I don't need to come back anymore. So identifying that exception not only changed that process of decision making, but it changed, oh, now she's got another star in her crown in terms of challenging this, I'm not a good decision maker. Brainstorming resources. Again, when I'm talking with students or alumni, a lot of times I'm saying you can read to learn about careers, you can talk to people, you can gain experience. What people might you talk to? What information might you read? You can just start brainstorming resources. With majors, okay, what could you look at? Well, I can look at websites, I can look with my Purdue, what if, I can talk to advisors. And we're moving into action. And one of the surprising ones, I surprised myself when I was thinking about that, summarizing is a huge component of action planning. And I'm going to give you an example. Darshini might remember this from December, because I used this with training with my own staff. This was one of the most complicated, it was an alum meeting, and it was one of the most complicated meetings that I've had in a long time. So I give you this summary, and your summarizing will be much better, much easier. You're trying to pull out the strengths, pull out the themes of the conversation, and bring it to a point where you can then go out with the action plan. So this was a summary of an appointment I had several months ago. So Mary, let me try to summarize what you're thinking about concerning potential career options. You know you have the option of returning to medical school, and you're happy to have that as an option, but you also know you have many other career options. You've been successful in several fields, including business, artistic ventures, and healthcare. You know that you have strong skills in creative arts, interpersonal relations, sales, and strong scientific ability. You've identified several careers that are potential alternatives to medicine. So if you can see, this was like a big discussion. I said, how does that summarize what we've talked about? Yes, that summarizes it really well. So we've discussed ways to research careers. You can read the information, you can talk to people, you can shadow, or you can gain some experience. What career research steps seem most appealing to you now? So all of a sudden we went from the sky's the limit to, okay, she had her identified list of career options. Now she could move into researching those options. Making it concrete, you offer options. Okay, you could read information from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. You could read information from professional associations. You could read information of job descriptions, jobs that are posted. What sounds good to you? So offer options, but let them lead in terms of what options are meaningful to them. Concrete, accountable, timing. This is the action. You can write that down. They can write it down. They can verbalize it. The accountability can be with you if you're working with somebody over time, if it's a supervisee, but also how will you keep yourself accountable? What will you know? And when will you do this? So build the accountability, the timing into the action plan. And then I have to give the caveat, be aware that we all have a natural tendency to resist change. And so you may be thinking, okay, they should have all of these steps, but the student may be thinking, okay, this is the amount I can bite off. This is what's chewable to me. Ready, willing, and able, again, this is just like a caveat that at the very beginning, remember I said that people are at different stages in change. And most of us, 90% of the people that we deal with, will be at some stage of readiness. But there will be that 5-10% that aren't. So have you ever shown up somewhere and you've said, here I am, ready, willing, and able? And we say that usually flippantly, but that's an incredibly powerful statement because what we're saying is, I am confident in my ability to do this. I am committed to this action, and I'm motivated for this action. So when we say that flippantly, we're actually saying a lot. So when you're looking at a student or a supervisee, you're looking for what are they owning in terms of, here I am, ready, willing, and able. And that could be something different than what you're thinking. That's why it goes back to their agenda and looking at what can they own with that action plan. What can they say, I'm ready, willing, and able? Scaling questions are a really good way to do that. That you can say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this to you? Or how confident are you that you can do that? And sometimes, very honestly, probably you all aren't like this, but sometimes I can think they're going to say 5, and they'll say 9.5, Or you can think they're going to say 9.5, and they'll say maybe a 4. So asking them to evaluate where they are with being ready, willing, and able can get you all on the same wavelength. And also it can be a help to them in terms of, okay, I'm still questioning my confidence in this area. And then you can follow up with what would bring you from a 5 to a 7? What would move you forward in how important it is to you or how confident you are in what you're doing. So I think I'm going to give you all an opportunity to ask questions. I'll summarize and then give you an opportunity to ask questions overall, because for a strange reason, we've actually got 3 minutes. So summarizing what we talked about strengths, we talked about solutions, we talked about action plans, and we talked about covering the whole thing with an atmosphere of you are able, which is essentially projecting self-efficacy, that we're saying, I believe in you. I believe in your ability. And that in itself causes the change. And we also talked about them setting agendas. So when I summarize that, and when I summarize my whole perspective with students, I come back to you is kind, you is smart, you is important. And that's how I will end with you all, and then give you an opportunity in the last couple minutes before we do the practice to ask questions about what we talked about. Anybody have questions? We covered a lot of material. Yes? Yeah. So that's, you asked, how do you steer the student or the staff, it could be any of us, towards the right decision? First of all, I'm going to open it to you all to answer that, and then I'll give you my. Anybody want to take a stab? Jennifer? So those are big issues. Anybody else want to offer theirs? So it is all about ownership. And so we may have a plan that we think is the right direction. I may think you need to get your GPA up. You know, that's a no-brainer here. But it goes back to what are you interested in accomplishing? How will this action lead you towards your goal? So if the goal is, I want to go to medical school, and they have a 2.5, and they're saying, I'm going to stay in the same major, I'm not going to change anything. Questions in terms of how will this move you towards your goal? Putting the ownership back on the student and asking reflective questions. But remember, the stages of change and motivational interviewing could be a whole workshop in itself, and definitely a whole hour of conversation. There's a process that we all go through in changing. And it's not really a linear process, it's a sliding process. But we cannot be ready to change in a certain area. And you as the coach, if you're moving into solutions, actually I forgot to say this, so thank you. If you're I said it at the beginning, I think, but I wanted to say it at the end too. If you're moving into solutions and actions, and that person isn't open to making a change, you'll actually increase the resistance. That if they are they're in denial, or they're in what we call pre-contemplation, or if they're in contemplation and you're trying to persuade them as opposed to helping them examine and think about and reflect the pros and cons, the positives and the negatives, the resistance will actually increase. So the 90% that you're dealing with, that they are at some level of readiness, the solutions and actions works. But if they are not in some stage of preparing for action, then focusing on solutions and actions can actually backfire. So ownership and looking at where they are in stages of change. And it could be that there is some change they're ready to make, but isn't the change that you're thinking. And sometimes asking those questions can open up a new avenue. So that's, for me, like I said, that's one of the biggest changes I've made, is really, even when I'm thinking, oh my goodness, if I've got an agenda, I want to try to hone in on what their agenda is for themselves. And you're trying to be an advocate, actually, for them in their agenda. And it can look quite different than ours. Good question, though. Yes? So your question is, when someone appears to be actively disengaged, what can you do to get them engaged? And you're asking not about their own engagement with their own strengths, but their engagement with you. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So the question is, when they're really actively disengaged with Purdue, almost like actively disengaged with work. And I would say oftentimes those are mental health issues, that it could be something happening at home. I mean, we could be talking very much about depression. And so in that, again, it wouldn't be looking at solutions, actions. It would be helping them to look at where they are, and that would end up being a referral oftentimes to the Dean of Students office, to CAPS, getting them to talk about it enough, because those are mental health issues. Okay, thank you very much. Remember, you is kind, you is smart, you is important. Good. I hope it was what you were expecting. Oh, yeah.